Okay, an emergency episode of Locked On Heat here. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. We have big news in the NBA. Kevin Durant has requested a trade from the Brooklyn Nets just hours before the start of free agency. And get this, on his list of preferred destinations are two teams, the Miami Heat and the Phoenix Suns. All right, we'll get to what the Heat can offer in a potential Kevin Durant trade here in a second. But first, David, just how surprised were you by this news?
Very. With the re-signing or the opting in of Kyrie Irving, the thought process is, well, he's committed to playing with Brooklyn. Everything's copacetic. They're going to play it out for another year, compete for a title, and we'll see what happens after that. We talked about in yesterday's episode that even though Kyrie was opting back in with the Nets, that didn't preclude them from looking for a trade at some point down the road. But for now, at least, it seemed like things were moving smoothly. Then KD says, you know what? Not quite. I'm not ready to play with Kyrie. I'm not ready to rehash this Nets experience one more time. I want to move on to different experiences. I want to try something different as I close out this last chapter of my career. And so he's requested a trade. So incredibly surprised. I had no idea what was happening. I actually wound up taking a nap today of all things and then waking up to the news that Kevin Durant is looking at the Miami Heat as a potential suitor. So that's incredible news.
I was dealing with the plumber. He was over and I had ESPN on and just in the background, and the plumber walks out the door, leaves my apartment, and I turn around and I just see on the bottom, the lower third of ESPN, Kevin Durant requests trades from Brooklyn. And I'm just like, wait, what did the plumber smack me over the head with a pipe and I woke up in some weird dream? Like, what just happened? I had no idea
Nice.
what was going on, because I know that all of our fans want to just get right to, all right, what are the Heat going to trade for Kevin Durant? Is it possible? But I don't want it to just uh, go understated how big of a deal this is. This is historic. We've
Yeah.
never seen anything like this. It's absolutely unprecedented. We know that we've seen star trades here and there,
Hmm.
and obviously very recently, this just seems to be what happens in the NBA, but not like this. Not one of the best 15 players in league history by any measure.
The
Uh,
closest thing. The closest thing is 2004 and the trade for Shaquille O'Neal. Like, as far as I can tell, like him requesting a trade from the Lakers, that being, and it was a different time too. It wasn't the
yeah,
24-hour news cycle, no social media, so you couldn't gauge that reaction. It was, you had to see it on the news later on. Oh, Shaquille O'Neal traded to the Miami Heat. So
and
that bodes well that Miami was involved in the last significant trade like this.
right.
So I think that's pretty good.
And that Shaq obviously was at the very tail end of his prime, but Kevin Durant was the front runner for MVP before he got hurt at the beginning of
That's right.
last season. 34 years old, but this is Kevin Durant, man. Like, players like this don't come along very often, and it's the reason I bring up how unprecedented it is that it's going to take a haul to get Kevin Durant. Like, everything we saw from Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, like these huge deals, like Kevin Durant is far and away a more valuable player than even Anthony Davis was. And so you got to start. You got to start there when we start having the conversation of potential compensation that Brooklyn is going to be looking for. I know Kevin Durant has Miami and Phoenix on his list of destinations, but Wojnarowski already reporting that half the league is called Brooklyn. Brooklyn by no means has to only trade Kevin Durant to Phoenix or Miami. Now, you do want to work with Kevin Durant to a degree. The team
Mhm.
trade Kevin Durant isn't going to want to trade for an unhappy Kevin Durant, right? So Sacramento can throw a million first round picks at Brooklyn. Kevin Durant's not going there because nobody's going to trade for an unhappy Kevin Durant, because we saw what just happens when Kevin Durant is unhappy. So somehow, when you're a player of Durant's stature, even though you've got 4 years left on your contract, you have leverage just by sheer greatness. And
Yeah.
so, Miami, Phoenix, we could start there, but it doesn't mean that Brooklyn's not going to be taking other calls and running that by Kevin Durant, saying, "Hey, New Orleans is interested. Do you have any interest in going down there and playing? Is that something we can work with you on?" Like, this is going to be a conversation. There's other things that can happen here.
Brooklyn has to take whatever deal is the best one for them, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they have to take the best deal, period. Like we've seen this before. You're never going to get commensurate value for a player of Kevin Durant's stature. Like whatever the package in return is, nothing compares to the actual greatness, the individual greatness of Kevin
Yeah.
Durant. And so I think there's always going to be some disappointment there. There's always going to be some lingering feelings amongst all the other teams. It was like, well, we could have offered more. Here's where the relationships matter. And I've said this before. I think the connection between Sean Marks and Pat Riley is a positive one for Miami. I think that's a good thing. I think not only did Marks learn about the whole process of coaching and running a team by being a Miami Heat player at one point and seeing Pat interact, I think that relationship's a strong one. We've seen deals between the two teams in the past. I think there's a connection there. These kinds of things matter when it comes down
Mhm.
to hashing out the nitty gritty here. And if Sean Marks wants to do a deal with Miami, they'll find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out, and they'll take what's offered because at this point in time, again, you're not going to get something in return value that's going to be equal to the greatness of Kevin Durant. So why not work with somebody that you feel comfortable with, keep KD happy, get something good in return, and just move on from the whole experience? Because right now, it looks like Brooklyn's going to have to lean into, if not a tank or anything like that, they're not going to compete for a title anytime soon. I don't think any kind of return is going to get them to where
Right.
they were just past season.
No. Well, I mean, they could get swept in the first round, but I understand what you mean. Like the ceiling that they had last year.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to happen. There's
No.
nothing that they're going to trade for that gets them there.
Right.
Um, but they're not going to tank. They have no incentive to tank because they don't own any of their draft picks. By the way,
Right.
Houston is very happy right now because they have all of Brooklyn's picks right now. They're loving this. So congrats if you're a Rockets fan. But there's there's two different things at play here, right?
Hmm.
It's what Brooklyn wants and it's what Kevin Durant wants. And then everything comes after that. What Brooklyn wants is to remain somewhat competitive. They don't have their own picks. They still have Ben Simmons, by the way, and the reporting around that is that they want to keep Ben Simmons and potentially
Sure.
build around him. They just made a trade for Royce O'Neal. Like you don't make that trade thinking that you're going to be tanking. They traded a first round pick for him, and so there is incentive for Brooklyn. Well, really, there's no incentive for them to tank, and there's incentive for them to remain competitive. And I think that this Brooklyn ownership, Joe Tsai, and
Right.
whoever's going to be in charge of running that front office, if it is Sean Marks or somebody else, we'll see. But they're going to want to stay, in the playoff picture. So that's what the Nets want. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
what Kevin Durant wants.
Mm.
Kevin Durant does not want a Carmelo Anthony situation where he joins a team and then that team is not competitive. The
Right.
Nets want to remain competitive and Kevin Durant want to remain competitive as a result of this trade. That's a really tough balance to pull. The reason Kevin Durant listed Phoenix and Miami as the two teams that he preferred to go to is because he believes that he can take Phoenix or Miami over the top into the NBA Finals. He does not want to join one of those teams if it means completely removing the cast of the number of one of those number one seeds, right? Like Kevin Durant doesn't want to go to a Heat team completely stripped of all of its good players, but
Right.
Brooklyn doesn't want to just take some 10 cents on the dollar type of package back, and that's what makes all of this so complicated. It's really going to be interesting where this goes. Let's talk about what Miami can offer here, because
Mm.
there is a weird rule in the CBA that prevents them from trading Bam Adebayo to Brooklyn because Brooklyn has Ben Simmons on their roster. Both Ben Simmons and Bam Adebayo signed 5-year contracts off of their rookie deals, and teams can't have two of those guys that they did not draft themselves
Right.
on their roster. It's a weird rule. I'm not sure why it is a rule, but lo and behold, it is a rule, and that prevents Miami being able to include Bam in a package for Kevin Durant. I also don't think that Kevin Durant wants to join a team that doesn't have Jimmy Butler on it. If Kevin Durant hears that, by the way, you're going to Miami, cool, we're getting Jimmy Butler for you. Kevin Durant no longer wants to go to Miami. That makes
Right.
no sense for Kevin Durant. So I think the best offer that they could really put together is Tyler Herro, Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson. You could put Nikola Jovic in that. You could put whatever young players, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, like all these, Omer Yurtseven, and then you've got potentially 3 first-round picks if they unlock the protections on that OKC thing in 2025, and then 3 other pick swaps. So that's a lot of stuff to throw at Brooklyn. But the other like Phoenix could potentially better that offer if they are able to sign and trade DeAndre Ayton
Mm-hmm.
and add another good player like Mikal Bridges, and then all of their picks that they have, and they're not dealing with some of the stuff that Miami has to deal with as far as unlocking they own all of their picks, and Miami does not. So as far as the two teams on Durant's list, those are the two offers, and I think it's pretty clear that Phoenix has the better offer than Miami.
Just because of I guess, the star power of DeAndre Ayton, if they're able to include him, and again, Mikal Bridges, a fine defender, a good two-way player,
You still have
young.
Chris Paul and Devin Booker under contract, right? Like if you're not losing, you're already prepared to lose Ayton if you're Phoenix, right?
Right.
Because you didn't extend him in the first place, and then you're basically just swapping Mikal Bridges for Kevin Durant, which is a
However,
no-brainer.
however, the wrinkle is with Ayton is if he signs an offer sheet with any other team at 6 p.m. once the moratorium on NBA free agency starts, he can't be included in any possible
Right.
trade, right? Because that offer sheet is there. So that is a huge wrinkle. And as many people have pointed out, DeAndre Ayton, not necessarily a fan of the Phoenix Suns and their front office, especially Robert Sarver. Having said that, maybe he says, you know what? Why would I want to help them in any way in acquiring Kevin Durant? I'll sign an offer sheet anywhere in order just to be able to screw them over, whether he actually takes that deal or not. So that's an
I've heard
interesting
Indiana could be interested. Atlanta could be interested. Like these are teams that are not waiting on Kevin Durant. Atlanta, by the way,
right.
could have made a move for Kevin Durant, but just traded 3 first-round picks for DeJounte Murray. So the
Right.
Hawks, according to Sam Amick's reporting, were prepared for a Kevin Durant move, put the
Huh.
DeJounte Murray stuff on hold, trade for DeJounte Murray, and then Kevin Durant's like, hey, by the way, I want to get traded. So maybe the Hawks are kicking themselves a little bit right now, but maybe they make that offer to DeAndre Ayton out of spite and of not getting out of into the Durant sweepstakes. The Pacers again could be an option. Toronto could be an option if they're not looking seriously at getting Kevin Durant, which they might
Now
too. Who knows?
the
Again, what we're
other
saying,
side
you
of
have to
this,
lose. Yeah,
the other side is this is that they could trade Bam Adebayo to a third team. Right.
yeah, Heat could. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But as you pointed out, I don't know that Kevin Durant wants to join a team without Bam Adebayo, and I don't know
right.
that it's worth it necessarily for Miami. Like Kevin Durant, a great player, but as we talked about recently on other episodes, look, he's 33, almost 34 in September. He's going to be, there's some injury history there. There's some concerns. Is he great enough to carry a team single handedly? No, I don't think any player is at this point in
Well,
time.
is Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, and
Enough.
Kyle Lowry? Because if you're able to keep him, and maybe if you move Bam, maybe you're able to keep Kyle Lowry.
Yep.
Is that trio good enough to get out of the East? I don't know. It depends on, I guess, how you fill in the cracks around them. But that is a really, really old trio where you basically have 2 shots at it,
Yep.
maybe 2
That's all that
shots at it.
matters.
I'm
That's all
not.
that matters, though.
Maybe it's all it takes. Maybe that's good enough if you're Pat Riley. I don't know. And to your point, like Durant has admired Bam Adebayo since they were
Oh
together on
yeah.
Team USA. It kind of goes with the same thing. Hey, Kevin Durant, we're trading you to Miami. Great. By the way, we're getting Bam Adebayo. Maybe I don't want to go there anymore.
Oh yeah.
It's tough. It really is. I don't know. The other thing about DeAndre Ayton is you're gonna have to pay him $40 million a year or
Right.
something of that
Right.
nature. Does Brooklyn value DeAndre Ayton in that way? I don't know that they do. Like I don't know what DeAndre Ayton's value around the league is, and I don't know what Brooklyn thinks of DeAndre Ayton. Would you rather have DeAndre Ayton than Tyler Herro? I think you would. Would you rather have DeAndre Ayton at $40 million over Tyler Herro at $25 million? That's a little bit more of a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it kind of goes back to the Nets. Who do you want more? What would you value the cap? What do you want? Who do you like more? Who do you value more? Tyler Herro at that number, DeAndre Ayton at this number. Um, I don't think that.
You've got Kyrie at the point. You got Roy O'Neal there as a 2-3, a wing defender, basically, who can stretch the floor to some degree. You got Ben Simmons there, kind of still a work in progress as your, whatever, forward guard type player. You need a center. You need a big man, obviously, to fill in that gap. You've got Nick
Yeah,
Claxton there, right? So he's an okay player,
maybe.
but he's not the long term solution for them. Having said that, you probably need more shooting, and if that's the case, combining Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, especially with Joe Harris and his future up in the air
Yeah.
too, that makes a lot of sense there. Like that's a
I
much
don't know
more
how much
well-rounded
Brooklyn
team
cares about fit.
at this
They have to
point.
care a little bit, yeah. But at this point, like I think you're just trying to let's get the best assets back and then just sort of figure it out on the fly. You're
Yeah.
sort of just building a airplane in air right now if
Yep.
you're Brooklyn because you didn't
Yep.
really anticipate any of this happening. But um, I don't know. There's so many other things that could happen here. The Memphis could put together a great deal. Minnesota could put together great deals. Like there's still teams on the rise. Like Memphis could conceivably put together a bunch of things, still be able to pair John Morant with Kevin Durant. Like there's so many teams that just because they weren't on Kevin Durant's list of preferred destinations, they're still calling, they're still putting packages together. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens with the Miami Heat. One thing I do know is that the Heat have been preparing for this Kevin Durant run. That might have been paused a little bit
Yep.
when Kyrie opted in, and
Right.
then they started looking in other directions. But we got reports, that they after that report that Jalen Brunson was going to meet with the Heat corrected that. They came out, told all the local beat reporters, "Hey, we actually don't have a meeting with Jalen Brunson. We don't want to meet with him. We have no interest in signing him."
Mm.
Uh, to some degree, the Heat were always looking for this kind of move, this sort of opportunity to land a guy of Kevin Durant's caliber, and right now that opportunity is there. They have a little bit of a leg up, a little bit of a head start, given that Kevin Durant included them on his list.
Right.
We'll see how much value that actually has. We're going to continue to monitor this as free agency keeps going. Free agency hasn't even started yet, David. It starts at 6 o'clock. It's 4:30 at the time that we're recording this. So we'll have another show later on. But a lot of moving pieces here, David. A lot of things
Yeah.
happening.
Should we even get into whether or not it's the right pursuit for Miami again? If you have to gut that much of a roster, like, is that even worth of a discussion? I know right now there's just a tantalizing possibility of getting a player as good as Kevin Durant. But to me, I just still have concerns about it. You kind of hinted at it before. If you're gutting the roster in order to get KD, can that be enough to compete for a title? Can you continue to rebuild? I don't even worry about the window so much, because you know what, the
Right.
window is what it is. The window changes and it opens and shuts all the time. It fluctuates with every new year in the NBA. You never know which great player will become available. Yesterday, KD wasn't available. Today, he is, and so that's why you always have to position yourself to retain some kind of level of flexibility. But for Miami, can they still compete for a title if they wind up gutting the roster as much as it's expected to be in order for them to acquire Kevin Durant? And would you be happy with a team that has, if they wind up trading Bam Adebayo or something like that in order to potentially compete for a title? Is this the right move for the Heat in order to capitalize on the now and sacrifice the future?
That is the central question, right? You don't make the Kevin Durant trade if it means that you can't compete even with a roster with Kevin Durant. So whatever trade you do, the cap to your offer has to be whatever it is that allows you to still compete for a title. So you can't trade everything for Kevin Durant, right? You can't trade Jimmy Butler for Kevin Durant. You just can't. And so that's where we're at, and that's why it's such a difficult balance. The Nets want to stay competitive, and Kevin Durant wants to stay competitive. And whatever team gets Kevin Durant is getting Kevin Durant to win a championship. You're not getting Kevin Durant to build around Kevin Durant. He's 34 years old. This is not like a 5, 6, 7 year deal, right? This is a chance to go ahead and win a championship next year. If Miami could figure out a trade that gets them Kevin Durant and allows them to compete for that championship, then you have to do it. Then you have to do it. But to your point,
You
you
just
don't
you
really
just
worry
asked a
about the
question
future
there.
anymore.
You just asked a question. Can Jimmy be traded for Kevin Durant?
I don't know. I don't know. I
Like
don't
in
see how
theory,
this team
like
can
we've seen the connection between Jimmy and Kyrie, right? Maybe they can make it work. And then you see KD and Bam getting along, when they were teammates together on the Olympic team. Like I'm not
Kyrie's gone.
asking for a trade. What?
Kyrie's gone. He's leaving Brooklyn. Like Kevin Durant is getting traded. They're not holding on to Kyrie Irving. They're going wholesale changes.
I
The
don't know.
Nets want to change the culture. Like once Kevin Durant is out of town, they're trading Kyrie Irving. That's the other
That's
part too.
fun.
If you don't land Kevin Durant, do you make a move for Kyrie Irving? These are all things that we're going to discuss on Locked On Heat as free agency unfolds. We'll have a lot more later tonight, David. But for now, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, Wes.